So you've had some moderate success on Upwork. Maybe you closed your first job, maybe you got your first $1,000, but now you're ready to really go to the next level, which is getting to that $10,000 mark. And you don't want to do it by charging what you were charging when you first started out on Upwork. So you really want to go to the next level. Well, we're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to get to that $10,000 mark. And there's quite a bit of things that you need to do differently than when you're trying to get to your first $1,000. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
So firstly, if you are below the $1,000 earnings on Upwork, I would highly recommend checking out our video. We go through all the fundamentals and the foundations of going from 0 to 1,000. So go watch that video if you haven't already. But we're talking to those freelancers who maybe you're at 2K, maybe you're at 5K. You've had some success, but not enough. And you want to get more traction, you want to get more momentum. The first step is analyzing what worked, taking a look at invoices, what types of projects, what types of industries, who were the best clients among these projects, and just taking a deep dive because that's going to inform you which direction, where do you want to go from here. When I was first starting out in freelancing, I had this Google Doc that I kept for every single client project, and I would label it lessons learned. And after I closed out a project, I would just jot down like 3 to 4 bullets on every client, on every project. And some projects were like, I hated this, I never want to do this again, I wasn't charging enough. And then other projects were like, yeah, this was a fantastic client to work with. So getting in the habit of analyzing what worked, what was the most profitable, and what is the most demand here.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I have I call it the post-mortems note. And every time I close out a project, I try to write down lessons learned, insights that I gain. And that has been such an invaluable note for me because every single project is an opportunity to learn something about yourself, learn something about your freelancing niche, and just kind of write down thoughts that come to you during that specific project. So I highly recommend all of you have some sort of note where you can jot down insights to yourself as you go through different projects. And that's going to be super important in this phase of your freelancing journey because at this stage, you've had some success. Maybe you hit that $1,000 mark. Maybe you're at the $5,000 mark, but you've probably had some clients that were less enjoyable than other clients. And then some clients might be standing out to you. Like those were the clients that I call dream clients. And you really want to set yourself up and your profile on Upwork so that you can attract those types of clients. So what you're going to do with that note to yourself is you're going to try to figure out, what did that client like about you? Why were they attracted to you? And why did they end up hiring you? These are extremely important things that you need to figure out because if one high value client liked you for one reason, there's a good chance that the next high value client is going to like you for that same reason. And you can even lean into those features of yourself. Maybe they liked your profile video. Maybe they liked a certain piece of portfolio work. And now you can move that piece to the very front of your portfolio. There's so many insights that you're going to learn from these initial clients in your Upwork journey. Write down notes, keep notes, and really try to figure out what's working and what's not working.
If I didn't keep this lessons learned doc, I would have forgot all of these lessons that I've learned. And one specific lesson I had to learn the hard way is to never work with solopreneurs. It's hilarious looking back through my notes and just seeing the aggravation in my writing. Like, do not work with solopreneurs, all caps. So it's like that was a painful lesson that I had to learn. But again, like Tyler said, if I didn't document these lessons, I would make the same mistake twice. And I'll give you another example. So, for my first couple of projects, I received feedback from some clients that said, wow, Jessica's really organized. And that's just something I never, ever would have thought is a value add. It's just kind of how I operate. But knowing that and knowing and seeing the feedback I received from those first few projects, I can lean into that unfair advantage. I can lean into that strength and make that part of my process when I work with future clients.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about what I call unfair advantages is a lot of times we just grow up doing things a certain way. We have certain traits, we have certain things that we're good at. And a lot of times, if we don't explicitly ask our clients or sort of encourage them to tell us certain things about ourselves, then we don't actually know what our unfair advantages are. And so we can't really lean into them as much as we could if we knew what our unfair advantages were. So, in this first phase of your Upwork journey, when you're getting these first initial clients, maybe you're raising your rates over time, really make sure that you understand and try to figure out what your unfair advantages are, because you're going to be able to lean into those. And then as you go for that $10,000 mark, you're going to be able to raise your rates and you're going to be able to stand out even further from your competition.
So the reason analyzing all of this stuff is even worth the time and effort is because it's going to help you start to identify your dream client. Who is that client profile that you want to work with? So doing your due diligence, you could even pull in the 80/20 rule, but taking some time. And once you start to understand, okay, I really liked client A. Client A was fantastic to work with. They provided me with information, they respected me, great communication. I want to work with client A. And then you can be more selective because you have the experience working with them. You can start to spot that type of client. So when you're going through the job feed, you can use that as a point of reference. Okay, client A was about this size. They had this problem that I helped them solve. And so it kind of puts a lens on helping you be a little bit more selective as you're going through and starting to identify different clients you want to work with.
Yeah, the goal here is to eventually get to a point where you are an expert in one specific thing. But, as we start out on Upwork, maybe we're a little more general, maybe we have a more broader service offering. But those initial clients that you closed out projects with should start to inform your idea of where you can specialize even further. And so as you continue, now you can update your profile title to be a little more specific, and you can rearrange your portfolio to be more in line with your specialty. So it's trying to go from a broad specialization to something that's even more specialized and that can attract more of those clients that you had a good experience with.
And remember, saying no to those low value clients opens up space. It opens up your roster to get more of those dream clients. And the goal is just to stack those dream clients.
Yeah, I mean, one of my very first clients was a tech company, a startup right out of San Francisco, and they were funded and they had an event in my city that they hired me for. And I wasn't even really thinking about tech companies as a niche to go after. But after I worked with them, I started thinking, you know what? When I do see a tent company next time in the job feed, or maybe one that sends me a private job invite, I'm definitely going to be more open to working with those clients, because a lot of times they're funded, a lot of times they have a lot of seed capital to work with, and a lot of times they sort of reflect the same aesthetic in terms of video quality that I offer. So these initial clients that you end up working with are going to give you ideas about areas that you can go after and position your profile to attract.
Yes, and this is something I would advise all freelancers. Learn from my mistakes. Just start to understand the correlation between the revenue of a business and the quality of a client. Because I'm telling you, from nearly a decade of experience, it's almost a one to one. You can almost peg a low value client based on the annual revenue of a business, which again, that's something you can consider in your onboarding process. Get a pulse check from them. At least ask a ballpark range. What does this business make on an annual basis? Because that's going to help you avoid so many low value clients.
Yeah, and something you're going to see yourself get better at the longer that you're on Upwork is you're going to be able to identify the green flags and the red flags of identifying good clients from bad clients. And a lot of the times, you can come into it with ideas about what a good client looks like and what a bad client looks like. But there are going to be times where you're going to have to just learn it the hard way. You're going to have to work with a bad client to sort of look backwards and say, oh, I missed this red flag. I missed that red flag. I'm going to write these red flags down for myself so I don't get caught up with a bad client again. And we have a great podcast on all about how to avoid bad clients, which is just as important during this phase of your Upwork journey as it is in the beginning of your journey. So make sure that as you continue on Upwork, as you get job history on Upwork, you start to identify what signals a good client from a bad client, because just because you've had a moderate level of success on Upwork, all it takes is one bad client to tank your job success score. And now you're gonna have to claw your way out of that problem. So stay diligent and really start to be really intentional about these red flags and green flags.
And that's why you should never ever rush the onboarding process. I know a lot of these low value clients like want to get started as soon as possible. They wanted the deliverable yesterday, but you push back on that and you don't rush your onboarding process because you have to pay attention to every single touch point, every single detail throughout this onboarding process because that's going to help you spot those red flags, maybe even some of those orange flags so you know what to look for. So again, take your time, do your due diligence, have a nice, thorough onboarding process because you're vetting them as much as they are vetting you.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I got those first few projects on Upwork. I got my first $1,000 and I got eventually to my first $5,000. But the more success I had on Upwork, the more neurotic I got about avoiding bad clients, because it just feels like, I've got all this momentum and all it takes is one bad client experience to reset my momentum. So a lot of people, they get cocky, they get overconfident as they start to build momentum on Upwork. And I would encourage you guys to, the more success you have, the farther you have to fall. So just use the success that you have to fuel your ability to be picky and your ability to be patient and wait for those good clients, because those good clients, they will appreciate that you have all these 5-star reviews, and they're not just 5-star reviews, but they're clients that are leaving you paragraph long reviews. And so you really want to make sure you can just stack these reviews on top of each other and just wait for the next high value client to find you, because it might take some patience, but it's going to protect your profile from collapsing after all this work that you've put in.
Because it can seriously collapse one project. One project goes sideways. Maybe you've been on the platform for 10 plus years and just one project, for whatever reason, takes a turn. Now that has impacted your ability to land high value clients. I was talking with someone the other day and I was looking at her profile and she had a really, really strong track record. She had paragraph long reviews, but then I saw just a string of no feedback givens and I even saw a 3-point review. And when I'm looking at that profile objectively, I'm like, oh, she lost her touch. She lost her touch. She's not continuing to raise the bar in terms of her service for her clients. And that just triggers me a little bit because she got complacent and like these clients are paying her money. So you have an obligation to do your best work if you do it right. And so just because you've been on Upwork for many, many years, don't get too cocky because it can change depending on the clients that you bring on.
Yeah, and this is another thing I really want to warn you guys about is you've had some initial success. You've got that first $5,000 earned. This is where a lot of Upworkers feel like they can start outsourcing work, because, when you do get to that $5,000 mark and you have that job success score at 100%, there's a good percentage of Upworkers who feel like, oh, I can start outsourcing work. I can start creating an agency model. I've got all these inbound leads. And once you do get to the $5,000 mark, you are going to feel yourself getting more inbound leads and it's going to feel amazing. But I would highly caution you to not go the outsourcing route, because, again, like Jessica said, if your quality dips and your reviews start getting worse and worse, then it doesn't matter how many earnings you have. It doesn't matter how many reviews you have if the last 3 reviews are not good. So keep your quality as high as you can. Try not to outsource unless you actually do want to go down the agency model. But in my opinion, it's better to get to that first $10,000 by providing an insanely high level quality service and just keeping that going, keeping the patience going strategic versus trying to get as many clients as you can.
Exactly. And just remember, like, Upwork is a long-term game. You are very, very intentional with the clients that you take on if you want to become expert vetted, if you want to have Upwork be this constant source of high-value lead generation. So You don't experiment on Upwork. You don't try new things. You don't try to do the agency route like Tyler said. You are just very, very methodical, very intentional with the types of projects because it impacts the longevity of your entire Upwork profile.
Yeah, don't get cocky. Do not get cocky. It's easy to get cocky when you feel like the success is starting to roll and things are starting to snowball. Do not get cocky. Make sure you stay humble and you stay focused on the long term game, which is getting to that $10,000 and then eventually getting to that $100,000 and beyond. And I promise you from experience, you can feel the confidence building, but you don't want that to fall into overconfidence and just saying yes to anything that comes through.
And how I got to my first 10K is I had basically a retainer client, and that worked wonders for me. And I know a few other people in our school community actually shared the same sentiment where they decided, let me get a few monthly retainer clients on Upwork, and that's how they can quickly get to 10K. Although I know you've taken a different route. Do you have any idea how many projects you had to do before you hit that 10K?
Well, unlike you, I can't offer ongoing work. I mean, I could, but I'm not really interested in that. So I have project-based projects, and I think, my first couple projects were worth $500 here, $1,000 here. And so I think I probably got to my $10,000 mark probably within a year and a half of dabbling with Upwork here and there. But I think I do remember getting one very large project. I think it was worth over $4,000. And it was a project where a company sent me to a property of theirs to film the property with the drone, film the property with the gimbal. And that was the first four-figure project or double four-figure project that I got, and I was like, "Wow." Like, I actually just closed this $4,000, $5,000 project like it was nothing. And so once you the point I wanna make here is that once you get those first five-star reviews, which is the most important phase of your Upwork journey, the first 2 or 3 five-star reviews, and they're not just five-star, they're actually has text there, they write out something specific about you. Once you get your profile in that position, you can wait for the next high value client, and the next high value client might be worth $5,000. They might be worth $10,000. And you need to keep that in mind. Like, once you set up your profile in a high quality way and you get those first social proof reviews, the next client could be a big one. And it's worth waiting for that.
And that's what you want. That's what you want. It's so funny, like, no offense, but I'm so turned off by your line of services because that just seems like so much extra work. Like, I would much rather hold out for a high value client that I would keep for the next 6 months, for the next year even, because I'm calculating the lifetime value. So if the onboarding, sales process takes a month, fine. If I'm going to have them on my roster for the next year or so. And maybe it's just because of my services too, like offering marketing. It's a win-win because first of all, I get to keep this client on an ongoing basis. I get to have a long-term client, which is fantastic. I can really deepen the relationship, go above and beyond, and just deliver an excellent service. But then I can also show the results of my work because with marketing specifically, it takes time. It takes a lot of time to see the fruits of your effort come to fruition. And so I can document. And at the end of the year, I can say, hey, here's a buttoned up, pretty polished report. Here are all the results I got you. And again, it reaffirms my value so that hopefully I can go another year with them if they're a great client.
Yeah, I guess my overall overarching point here is that once your profile hits a certain point and you have everything in there, the profile is fully built out, and you have those strong portfolio items and you're strongly positioned, getting to 10K, you can get catapulted to 10K way faster than you think. And all it takes is one or two super high value clients, and now you're at 10K, like it was nothing. So just keep that in mind. If you feel like if you feel like you're plateauing, you feel like the grind of getting to $10,000 earned is going to be crazy. It's actually not. If you find the right client and attract the right client, you can get catapulted to 10K really fast.
Speaking of catapulting, you can catapult faster if you have fixed pricing or monthly retainer pricing, because you probably don't even want to do the math. Like if you're trying to get to 10K, divide that by your hourly rate, that's going to take eons to get to that 10K. So work smarter versus harder. And it's funny we're talking about this. We had a great group coaching call in our school community today. And one person in particular was kind of in that transition where they had been charging hourly up until now, and they're trying to make that transition. They're trying to package up their services so that they can offer fixed, because you do the math and you can figure out, oh, I just need to line up maybe 3 to 4 fixed monthly retainer clients to get to 10K. So you're not just spinning your wheels at this hourly rate. It's really hard. It's really, really hard to get to 10K. Sure, you could do it, but it's just going to take you a long, long time. And who knows, you might burn out in the process.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're in a very specific niche where clients are used to paying over $100 an hour, over $200 an hour, like marketing consulting or super high end, super niche consulting, get away from the hourly pricing and get into fixed pricing. Jessica and I swear by it. It's worked for us and it's worked for a lot of other freelancers. And it just gets your clients away from this hourly model where they're worried about how long, how many hours it's going to take you to get a project done. We have multiple podcasts about how to charge as a freelancer. So check that out. But yeah, if you want to get to 10K, you're probably going to need to get away from the hourly pricing model as soon as possible.
And you might be thinking, well, how do I even package up my services? Maybe the jobs that I've currently worked on were just hourly, but I think it's absolutely possible. You just need to start to identify those commonalities of like, okay, this client wanted this client wanted this. How can I package those up in some sort of offer that would be attractive to my dream client? And let's say project by project varies quite a bit and doing some sort of like fixed offer doesn't make sense, you could at least package up your services and say, hey, I offer a retainer. Here's X amount of hours for the month, and just package it up in that way, which can train your clients to think through, okay, got it. I'm not micromanaging their hours. I'm not checking in on that. So it's a very slight shift. But again, you also have to have the confidence. You have to have the confidence to get on those discovery calls and tell this potential client, hey, even though my Upwork profile says hourly, I actually don't charge hourly. I charge by a fixed rate, or I charge by a monthly retainer. And look, it's going to be better for you as the client in the long run, because everything that you want is in that fixed price or monthly retainer. You're just billing it in a different way. So I always frame it to clients, it's a win-win. We already agreed on scope. Great. You don't have to micromanage me. You get what you paid for. And I'm not going to be obsessing over the specific hours, but you got to have that confidence as a freelancer to at least have that conversation.
Yeah, and this is a great point in the discussion to talk about confidence. This is where your confidence should be building, and you should feel like you're starting to get some leverage. When you start out on Upwork, you feel like you have no leverage. You feel like there's all these other freelancers that have more reviews, more earnings. But after you get your first 5-star review and your second 5-star review, and you raise your rates and you start to get more inbound traffic on your profile, use that confidence to your advantage. Use that confidence to come across more confident on video, to feel more nonchalant during these discovery calls. I think that's a really important thing to talk about is like, you never want to be overly excited when you're talking to a new client, because that signals this is a new experience for you. That signals that you're out of your depth and it's going to turn a client off. So use the confidence, whatever you got to do. Jessica always talks about looking at past reviews, looking at past work that went well. Use this confidence to become a freelancer that is very professional in how they come across and how they communicate.
So this was a sneaky little trick that worked wonders for me, especially as I was starting out freelancing and I wasn't 100% confident. What I would do before every sales call, I would review my LinkedIn recommendations. And that was my way of racking up kind of that social proof. And so new clients could see, oh, wow, Jessica has 50 amazing LinkedIn recommendations. But it was also a secret little tool for me because if I ever felt imposter syndrome, or maybe I just wasn't feeling confident that day, I could just read through 10 of those and be like, oh, okay, I do know what I'm doing. And I promise you, I showed up to those sales calls or those discovery calls just way more confident if I was doubting myself because clients can just sense that instantly. I've been on the other side of that, and it's so obvious. It is so obvious by the way someone speaks. Are they comfortable with pauses? How are they articulating their sentences? Are they rushed? Like, there's just so many indicators that shows, okay, is this a legit freelancer? Do they know what they're doing? Or are they kind of faking it? Or do they have imposter syndrome?
Yeah, you have to kill any sense of doubt that is still in your mind about your ability to execute the work, your ability to have these conversations. You cannot have any imposter syndrome. If you want to be a 10K plus freelancer, you need to be rock solid in your confidence. And you should have that confidence because you got to this point. You got over the hardest part, which is that initial phase of Upwork, of getting those first few projects, of all that stuff. So you should feel that confidence. You've done good work for clients. You've charged a higher than normal rate. So you're a pro, be the pro, and be confident.
Let's say you're charging hourly right now and you're tired of it, you're burnt out, you actually want to transition your pricing to either fixed project or an ongoing monthly retainer. This could be a really good opportunity to package up your value into value-based pricing. So, just as a simple example, social media, as I started out on Upwork in social media, I started to get a little bit more strategic with how I packaged up my services. And I decided, you know what? Let me speak the language of a business owner. Yes, my services cover these specific deliverables, whatever X amount of posts across 3 different platforms, direct message, community engagement, yada, yada. Like, those are the actual deliverables. But what do those deliverables actually get the client? Well, they get the client awareness, potentially revenue, brand recognition, all of these other things that the business owner cares more about. They could care less how many posts go out in a week. They care about revenue, or they care about awareness or overall brand recognition. So I started to speak the language of my ideal client. What do they actually want to see? And I think that helped me close projects because the way I packaged up my value and I packaged up my services, I was able to be more in line with the end result that they were looking for. And I think that helped me have a lot of success. So think about that as a freelancer and you're packaging up your services. What problem are you solving? And what does the client really care about? By the end of the day, like, they know they need social media posts, but what do those social media posts actually get the company?
The other thing you need to be doing in this stage of your Upwork journey is you need to be raising your rates. Okay. Every time you get a glowing 5-star review, every time you complete a successful project, that is evidence that your pricing was fair and maybe it was overly fair. Maybe it's time to raise it to reflect the experience that you have and the proof that you can do a good job. So, the more proof that you get on your profile that shows people, yes, I can do a good job and I can do it consistently, that is just more leverage for yourself that you can raise your rates because high value clients expect to pay higher rates for better freelancers. And I need you guys to really understand that. High value clients gladly pay higher rates for better freelancers. So the more reviews you get on your profile, the more social proof you have, the better your work looks to clients, the higher your rates should be to reflect that. And let's be honest, professionals charge professional rates. And high value clients are actually going to be repulsed by freelancers that undermine themselves with low rates. And we have an entire podcast, our last podcast, which is all about how to raise your rates and why you need to raise your rates as soon as possible if you're a freelancer. And one of the big points we made in that podcast is high value clients are repulsed by freelancers that don't raise their rates, that try to offer too low of a rate. And I can tell you, I have missed out on a lot of projects, more than I care to admit, by underbidding. projects, by being trying to be the lowest bid. High value clients are not interested in that. They are interested in freelancers that have self-confidence and know their worth. So during this phase, as you stack those reviews, as your earnings goes up, start raising your rates.
So I know that sounds really intimidating, especially if you're just getting some traction on Upwork. But listen, clients, those low value clients, are going to be turned off by your premium rates, but you didn't want them anyways. Those low value clients would just be taking up space on your client roster. You want to hold space for those high value clients. Those are the clients that you want to be working with anyways. So it's fine if you are not attracting those low value clients. If you're doing it right, that's when you get less inquiries, and you only get the right inquiries of high value clients that will pay your rates happily. They'll think, okay, great, this rate is market, it's on par with the market, it's based on the value I'm getting working with this top tier freelancer. Fine, I'll pay it, no problem. Another idea that I want to talk about is this concept of a price ceiling. There is a price ceiling to every service out there, and what you have to figure out, especially if you're around like the 5K mark, is what is that price ceiling? Compare yourself to the top 20% of those high value freelancers. Where do you compare? Do you have a little bit more wiggle room to raise your rates based on how many discovery calls you're having or how many freelancers are actually reaching out to you? That's what I did when I was starting out in social media. I kept getting on these discovery calls and clients were messaging me, and I thought, what happens if I just raise my price a little bit? And then I continued to get more clients coming in, and then I just continued to raise it until the demand was lower. And so I hit the price ceiling. And so I understood, okay, gotcha. Like, clients are technically not willing to pay above this price point, but it's different. It's different for every single service. And you have to have that confidence to figure out, what are clients willing to pay for my service?
Yeah, I mean, there's a price ceiling for everything, but usually it's way, 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 way higher than you think it is. And the problem that most freelancers have is they're comparing themselves to the masses of average freelancers. And instead of focusing on getting into that top 20% of their skill, they worry about competing with all these 80% low end freelancers. So I would encourage you guys to only compare yourself to the best of the best, because that's what you have to aspire for if you want to be a high end freelancer, if you want to be a high level freelancer. So do not concern yourself with the freelancers that are undercutting and that are offering a low price, because they will probably burn out, like we talked about in the Raise Your Rates podcast. They're not going to be around for very long if they offer bottom barrel rates. Okay, do not concern yourself with them and only compare yourself to the best of the best.
So if we compare the difference between 0 to 1K versus 1K to 10K, the 0 to 1K is all about figuring out if this is viable. Can you actually make money as a freelancer? Your confidence is still probably pretty shaky. You might be saying yes to literally every single project that comes through on Upwork. You feel kind of desperate. Then once you shift over into 1K to 10K, then you start to be a little bit more confident. You start to be a little bit more strategic with the clients that you take on. You maybe have identified those dream clients. You've hopefully shifted your pricing from hourly to either fixed pricing or a monthly retainer. And then it's all about getting traction and continuing to get momentum. So hopefully you hit the 50K and then eventually the 100K.
Yeah, I mean, this phase of the journey is all about maintaining the momentum that you've built in that first part of your journey. It's all about keeping your eyes on the road. Don't get distracted by shiny objects, and really start to become a professional. Start to really think of yourself as a professional. Always have that sort of mindset, like, I'm a professional. I carry myself in professional ways. I charge professional rates. I come across as a professional in my confidence, and I work with professional clients, right? I don't work with low end, low budgeted clients because I'm a professional. So that's the way that you need to go about this stage of your journey. And if you keep your eye on the ball, you will get to 10K, and it's going to happen a lot faster than you think. So, are you in the thick of it on Upwork? Are you trying to get to that 10K mark? Maybe it's been a rocky start for you. If you're looking for some coaching, some mentoring, our school is live and we've been having an amazing time with our first batch of students. The link is in the description. Otherwise, let us know if there's any topics, freelancing topics you'd like us to cover in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one. Happy freelancing.